And Betty and I had dinner with him a couple of times at an 8th Air Force reunion. He came over as our speaker, and he was the one who put the jet squadron together. He had every pilot in that jet squadron he put together had over 100 victories. Can you imagine guys like me with 10 or 12, 15 victories maybe coming up? I mean, not victories, but 10, 15 hours or so coming up against guys like this. But anyway, I asked him, I said, how many hours did you have in a Messerschmitt when you came up against us? And he said, probably 2,000. And I said, he said, I flew in the Spanish Civil War, the Blitzkrieg of Poland, the Low Countries War, and the Battle of Britain. He said, I had 84 victories before I ever came up against you guys. And he said, how many hours did you have in the Thunderbolt when you came up against us for the first time? I very meekly said 60. But anyway,
say his name again.
Ladies' man. He married a 39-year-old Fraulein when he was 70. I think he was 79 when he married her.
What was his name again?
Galland, G-A-L-L-A-N-D, Adolph Galland. And he died about 6 or 8 years ago. But he had married this 39-year-old Fraulein. I got to show you a couple of other things here. I had it, and they told me what they'd done on D-Day. I got up and I said, ladies and gentlemen, I said, these two gentlemen are your real heroes. I said, on D-Day I was doing what I did every day. I said, there was nothing new to me, but these guys were going in the first time under fire, doing something that had never been done before, and seeing all their buddies being killed beside them. I said, they are your heroes. I said, and that's all I said. I sat down.
Wow.
But I really meant that. Flying over D-Day 6 times, I mean over the beaches 6 times, I saw them going in, and it was awful. It was awful. The weather was pretty bad, but we could see them through the breaks in the clouds, and we were only flying at about 1,000 feet.
Really?
To go in, so on the second and third missions, the first mission we went in higher. But on the second and third missions, we only flew about 1,500 feet probably, so we could see pretty well what was going on. It was what those Marines did going up that. Have any of you been to the beaches?
Never done that. No, sir.
If you ever have a chance, go. It's really a thrilling sight to realize what was going on there, and to look at that Point de Hoc where those Marines went up under fire. And just to walk on the beach is really a thrill, even for a person who was there. I mean, I wasn't on the beach, but even for a person who participated, it's still a big thrill for me. And I was very much humbled just to think about what went on there again. But it was a great war in many ways, but we had a lot of fun. We did a lot of crazy things. You guys might be interested. I didn't consider myself a ladies' man, but I had a lot of fun. I had girlfriends and so forth.
Plural. You noticed the plural, right?
When I was in training in California, I was dating this gal. She had met her at the Hollywood Canteen, and we danced and got acquainted, and I dated her pretty regularly, and until I was sent away to the next station. Anyway, while I was in Europe, now think about this, while I was in Europe, she got on a train and rode from California to West Virginia. Most of these trains were full of troops. By herself to West Virginia to meet my parents, thinking I was going to marry her.
That's what we call awkward.
Rode to her work. She worked on Saturdays as a receptionist at a hotel, and the only hotel in the county, I think. Anyway, she worked there on Saturdays, and she always rode to work with my mother on Saturdays, because my mother worked in a J.C. Penney Company store. And this Saturday, when the girl was getting ready to go back to California, my mother was taking her to the train and Betty was riding with her in the same car. And my mother said the car was full of icicles.
Now, is the story about getting out one side of the train and going and talking to this one and back over? I mean, yeah, I bet it was full of icicles.
Anyway, and 55 years later, 55 years after the war, Betty and I went back, and we were over there with a reunion, one of our reunion groups, and our travel agent said, "What do you want to do today, Punchy?" And I said, "I want to go find my old girlfriend." And she looked at Betty, and Betty said, "Let's do it."
This is at least number 3, by the way, guys. Go ahead.
The original player.
Right, that's
But I got to tell you how I met these two girls. This is really funny. When we first got there, they didn't have enough Thunderbolts for us to fly. They said just fly anything. So we were at this base, and they had a cub out there. So to get familiar with the countryside, Johnny Woods and I got in a cub, and we were flying around at about 300 or 400 feet. And we see these two girls on horseback. Have I told you this story? And we followed these girls back to the village. But when we got to the village, they turned their horses over to a lackey, and we said, "Man, this looks really good." So we circled around, and Johnny wrote a note, pulled a piece of paper from his flight suit, wrote a note, "We'll be over to see you soon." So I flew down between the Dutch barn and the house, and we threw it out the window of the cub, and they got it and read it, and they waved, and we said, "Well, that's a yes." So about a week or so later, we got on our bicycles and
First
rode
straight.
to this village, and we got there, and this tall English woman was standing there and looking very stern looking, and I said, in my best Southern manner, I said, "Good morning, ma'am." She said, "Good morning." I said, "We're the pilots who were over the other day." She said, "Oh, yes, I suppose you came to meet my daughters." I said, "Yes, ma'am, I suppose we did." And she invited us in, we had tea, and a little later the girls came in to tea, but we talked to the mother and father for about an hour before the girls came in.
Really?
Yeah. They checked us out. They were checking us out.
Yeah.
But anyway, we dated the girls and had a good time until we were transferred to a combat unit. But 55 years later, I went back and found this gal. We didn't know her name. She'd been married and divorced and remarried. Had no idea what her name was. I started knocking on doors.
Tell them about Betty. Where they were.
Headquarters, right? Newspaper experience. So they sent me to headquarters for a couple of months. And while I was there, the colonel came in one day and he said, "Aren't you from West Virginia?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "Well, we have a West Virginia war correspondent here who wants to go around and meet some of the West Virginians, and he can interview them and put it on a record and send it back to his radio station." He had opened up the West Virginia's first radio network, and said he wants to interview these. He says, "Well, get you a plane and fly him around all the bases and let him interview." So I took this guy out to the airplane the next morning. It was a Norseman. I don't know whether you know what a Norseman looks like or not. It's like a great big Cessna.
Looks like a beaver.
Huh?
Looks kind of like a beaver.
Yeah, it was a big single-engine airplane. I get in the airplane, and
It's right there.
I got in the airplane when this guy was sitting on my right, and the story's funnier when I tell it. But he was sitting on my right. Well, I called a mechanic over. I said, "Hey, Mac, how do you start this thing?" And he came over and told me how to start the engine. As we were taxiing out, this guy says, "Why didn't you know how to start this airplane?" I said, "I've never seen one of them before." And so we would get to the end of the runway. I figured I'm going to have a little fun with him, and I rolled the trim tabs full forward
That's the Norseman.
so I could stay on the runway as long as possible. I'm going down the runway, and I'm acting like I'm trying to pull it off the ground. I'm actually pulled it off the ground. My body was coming back, but my hairs were going forward. And anyway, this guy, as the trees got bigger, his eyes got bigger, and so forth. And when I got near the end of the runway, I rolled the trim tabs back and went up like an elevator. The plane flew at about 120 miles an hour. Well, I was cruising along, and I used to navigating in a Mustang, a lot faster, of course. And when all at once I started looking around like this, and he said, "What's the matter?" I said, "I'm lost." He said, "Well, there's some maps over here in this pocket." He says, "Why don't you look at those?" I said, "I never could read those things." I said, "I got to find me a train so I know where I am." So I saw a train going along, and I was flying probably maybe 3,000 or 4,000 feet. And I see this train, and I peeled off and went down beside the train. Now, you got to visualize this guy sitting on my right. and the train's going like this down here, and I'm flying about the same level with the train. And I'm going over trees and up telephone poles and so forth. I have my head turned like this, but I'm watching where I'm going. This guy's over there screaming, ah, look out, look out. Anyway, we get back to my base, and I introduce him to the colonel, and I walked away from him because I wanted to visit with some of the guys I've been flying combat with. Anyway, he said to the colonel, Colonel, what did he let this guy fly for? I said, I offered him a cigarette, and he said, no thanks, I don't smoke, I have a weak heart. He said, what are they doing letting the guy fly with a weak heart? And anyway, it was just, the colonel laughed to himself because he had heard me say this before. And I never did smoke in my life, I don't smoke, so. So I never did smoke, so it was just my way, my excuse when anybody offered me a cigarette. I would say, no thanks, I don't smoke, I have a weak heart. And so, anyway, he said to the colonel, what are they doing letting the guy fly with a weak heart? So, anyway, I had a lot of fun with that guy. He wrote a book called Anybody Here from West Virginia, and he tells this story about flying with this crazy fighter pilot. And the story's in this magazine. It doesn't include all the things that were said back and forth, but it's a pretty good story.
Tell them about this particular airplane.
Oh yeah, I forgot to tell you, our public relations officer wanted to make some notes. Wanted to make some notes, get along with the British a little better, make some points with the British. So he just said, the next airplane we get, we're going to call it Princess Elizabeth. We're going to paint Princess Elizabeth on it, and we're going to invite her up here to dedicate the airplane. So she came up. We had all the airplanes sitting wingtip to wingtip in front of headquarters. And the colonel came out to check, make sure everything was right. The first thing he sees is this airplane, X-Lac, shit and get. He said, get that GD airplane off the field immediately.
Somebody just thought it'd be funny to park it by the Princess Elizabeth.
And one of the GIs jumped on a cleat track, pulled the airplane away, and another guy pulled one in its place. They were just doing it for fun anyway.
And this that Norseman that he was talking about, this picture of the Norseman,
Yeah.
they had him painted with the blue nose too.
Yeah.
You just kind of tell right here in that picture, it's got the
It was a
blue.
good sized single engine airplane.
It looks just like a beaver.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, it's a big single engine airplane.